Hey everybody, today we are going to review graphs of periodic functions and finding exact trigonometric values on a unit circle. And we'll split this into two different videos. So we'll start here with graphs of periodic functions. So first we've got an equation of a periodic function, and we're looking for some information out of this equation. Now when I have an equation, I look for four things: S, A, D, and B. So S is right here. It's the sinusoidal axis. It is 4. A is right here in front of sine or cosine. So there's A. A is 3. D is the displacement, and it's opposite of the sine, so that means it shifts right pi over 6, so positive pi over 6. If this were positive, I would put negative pi over 6 for my displacement. And B is right here. B is 1. So the vertical shift, that is the sinusoidal axis. Okay, it shifts up 4. The amplitude, the height above or below the center line or the sinusoidal axis, is 3. The phase shift is D, the displacement. It's pi over 6, and that is to the right. The period is 2 pi over B. So 2 pi over B, which is 1, so the period is 2 pi. Now the domain of a periodic function, this is going to graph as a wave, and it's going to continue forever right and forever left. The domain is all real numbers. Those are the x values. The range is the set of y values. So it's not going to go up or down forever. So I'm going to say y is greater than or equal to some number, but less than or equal to some other number. So if our sinusoidal axis, the center line, is at 4, and it goes 3 above that and 3 below that, then the maximum is going to be 7. So y has to be less than or equal to 7. And then 4 minus 3 is 1, so the minimum y value is 1. So y is going to be greater than or equal to 1, but less than or equal to 7. So here we have an equation again, and we are going to find some information and then graph it. So again, I'll start with S, A, D, and B. S is right here. S is 2. A is in front of sine. A is 4. D is the displacement, and inside of here is plus nothing, so the displacement is 0. And B is right here in front of the x. B is 6. So the sinusoidal axis, that's the vertical shift. It's 2. A is the amplitude. It's 4. Phase shift is the displacement. It's displaced 0, so left and right, it's not shifted at all. And then the period is 2 pi over B, which is 6. And 2 over 6 simplifies to 1/3, so that's pi over 3. Now to graph this, the center line is the vertical shift, or the sinusoidal axis. It's shifted up 2 units. So the center line is going to be 2. The amplitude is 4, which means it's going to go 4 above that. So the maximum is going to be 6. 2 plus 4 is 6, and 2 minus 4 is negative 2, so it's going to have a minimum at negative 2. It is a sine equation, and sine, the first output for sine is 0, which means it's going to start right here on its center line. And let's graph one cycle, so it's going to go up. It is positive 4 sine, so it will go up first, and then down to the minimum, and back to the center line. And there is one cycle. Now it went from 0 through one cycle, and that cycle has a length or a period of pi over 3. So we went from 0 to pi over 3. And we're going to mark a few other key points along the way. When it's at its minimum, on its center line again, and then at its maximum, and then here on the center line it's at 0. So to find these radian values, we have a radian value here at pi over 3. I'll take half of that, and that's going to be right here, and all I have to do is double the denominator, so that's pi over 6. Half of that takes me right here, and I'll double the denominator and get pi over 12. Okay, now in this case, I can just count. We've got 0, then 1/12, 2/12, 3/12. And 3/12 is 1/4, so that's 1 pi over 4. So that's 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, and 4/12. Okay, so we're going to do one more graph. So we've got some information here, and from this information, we're going to find S, A, D, and B. So S is right here. It's the sinusoidal axis, -2, which means that that's the vertical shift, -2. So our center line is going to be right here at -2. A is 3, so that's the amplitude. The amplitude is 3, so from -2 we're going to add 3, and that's going to take us up to a maximum of 1. The minimum then is going to be found by -2 minus 3, and that is -5. Okay, then D is right here. Minus 90 degrees means D is positive 90, so the phase shift is 90 degrees. Then B is right here. B is 1, so the period is, well, just like we did up here, 2 pi over B, except this time we're not in radians, we're in degrees, and 2 pi radians is the same as 360 degrees. Since we are in degrees, we'll do 360 over B, which is 1. So 360 degrees is the period. So this is cosine, which means it's going to start at the max or min. The first value of cosine on the unit circle is 1, so that really just means we're starting at the max. And since it's positive, we don't flip it to the min, so we keep it at the max. So it's going to start up here on the maximum, but we have to shift 90 degrees to the right first. So we're going to call this 90 degrees right here and start at the maximum right there at 90 degrees. Now a cosine graph, since it starts at the top, we need to make sure it's curved. The graph is going to be curved at the top or bottom, so we start coming out of the back side of a curve and then back up to the top, and there is our 1 cycle. So we'll make a mark there. Then we'll go back to where it's at its center line and make a mark. Then at the minimum, then at the center line again, and we already have the mark here at the maximum. So to get these 3 points, these 3 degree measures, what I need to do is first add the period. So I started at 90, and I went 360 degrees from there. 90 plus 360 is 450. So right here we are at 450 degrees. To get the center, what I'm going to do is take the average of 90 and 450. So if I take 450 and add 90, and then divide by 2, I get the average, and that is 270. So right here we're at 270 degrees. Now I'll do the average of 90 and 270. So I've got 270 plus 90, and that's 360, divided by 2, and I'm at 180. Looks like I'm just counting by 90s here now. 90, 180, 270, and this one's probably going to be 360. And another way to find that is to find the average of 270 and 450. So 270 plus 450 divided by 2 is 360. So here we're at 360 degrees. On this graph, we are going to highlight 1 cycle. We could pretty much choose any spot to start. I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to trace over this graph until it looks like I'm going to start repeating a pattern. And when I get up here, if I go any further, I'm just going to repeat the pattern. So that right there is one cycle. Next, we are going to match equations to a graph. So we've got 4 equations here and 4 graphs, and we are going to match the equations to the graph. So let's look at each graph first and pull some information out of it. It looks like all of these equations just have an amplitude or a b in them, or both. So in this graph, first I notice it starts at the center line, so it's a sine equation. The amplitude from the center line to the maximum appears to be 3, so a is 3. The period, it goes from 0, and I'm going to trace one full cycle. It ends right here. The period is 2 pi, so b is 2 pi over the period, which is 2 pi. So b is 1. Okay, let's move on to the next graph. It starts at the maximum, so this one's going to be cosine. The maximum height above the center line is 1, so the amplitude is 1. And b is 2 pi over the period, so I'm going to trace one cycle. And that ends right here. It looks like it goes from 0 to 6 pi. So the period is 6 pi, so b is 2 pi over 6 pi, which is 1/3. This one starts at its maximum, so it's cosine. Its amplitude, it looks like it only gets a half a unit above the center line, so the amplitude is 1/2. And b is 2 pi over the period, so I'll trace one cycle. And that ends right here at 2 pi, which means b is 1. And this one here starts at the maximum, so it's a cosine equation. Its amplitude, it gets 2 units above or below the center line, so the amplitude is 2. And b is 2 pi over the period. The period, let's see, trace one cycle, and we end right there at 2 pi, so the period is 2 pi, so b is 1. Sine with an amplitude of 3 and b 1. This is the only option right here, so number 4 is A. Cosine with an amplitude of 1 and b of 1/3. This is the only one with an amplitude of 1, and it's theta over 3, which is the same as 1/3 theta. So number 2 is B. C is cosine with an amplitude of 1/2, and b is 1, so C is right here. Amplitude of 1/2, b is 1. And that means this must be D. We've got amplitude, it's cosine, amplitude is 2, and b is 1, so that is D. So we'll end this video here, and in the next video we will find trig values on the unit circle.